Here we are. Hello, I'm Scott Wilkins with Backstage View. We are sitting here with the great Tim O'Brien. Thanks, Tim, for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it. And let's just get into a couple of questions I'll ask you. We'll talk a little and then talk about your new projects coming up. And first thing I wanted to ask you is, I remember you were doing some work with Mark Knopfler.
Yeah, that's been a while back.
Yeah, how'd that come about, and what was it all about?
Well, I'm good pals with a guy named John McCusker, and John signed on to be in Mark's band several years ago. I mean, this is probably 10 years ago. Mark started hiring some people playing accordion and fiddle and bagpipes and that kind of thing. He loves all the different textures of sound, and so John ended up doing that gig on the road. Then his wife, they got ready to have their first child, so he took maternity leave.
Oh.
So they're getting ready to do a 5-week run in the United States, and then they were going to do the European run in the summer following that. So I took the 5 weeks in the States with Mark, and it was a great thing. I got to, rehearse and learn from the man. It was a great experience, and then later on, maybe a year and a half later, I got to make a record with him. So I spent a week or so working in London at his studio, and I mean, the guy's really got a lot of stuff together.
Yeah.
And I didn't know much about his songwriting. I knew the hits. Certainly, I remember when the Sultans of Swing came out. I was like,
right.
Wow, what is this? This is a really cool story song about a weird little band and great guitar solo and kind of Dylan-style vocal. Like, what is this guy? And then he kept coming. And when you get up close to all those songs and you start playing them every night, you really figure out what a great songwriter he is. And plus, I really learned a lot about what not to play and how to be in a larger ensemble.
Right.
Really to be in control. I mean, he really has ears like an elephant. He really can hear everything that's going on. And every day before the show, he says, let's go over this one now. It doesn't go like that. Quite like that right in this point in the song or whatever, or let's fix the sound here because he's got a great sound crew. Or he says, the lights, they don't flash on the guy doing that there, they flash on this guy. And he just really,
so he knows
really
everything
a lot
that's
together.
going on.
He's really sharp.
Well,
and a real gentleman too.
You talk about on the songwriting, you're writing songs all the time, and tell me, when you started out writing songs, I assume the process obviously evolved. What would you tell someone like an up-and-coming person about songwriting process, in as much as I imagine at the beginning at least you probably wrote a few songs that never made it, you'd have to write is that the case, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it's like for everyone else. I know for me, I write, 3 or 4, and then maybe one of them will be a keeper.
Right.
It's kind of like, you just kind of keep working at it. And I think I get more consistent all the time. Yeah. But I also write the same song over and over, too. So, kind of have to try to find a new way into it. And it just depends, how to get into it. I think you need to study the other songwriters, the ones you like. And I know that when I got with Hot Rise, for instance, when I became the lead singer, this was the first group that where I was singing all the songs, and that I was a part of. And so I would pick, we would pick songs that we all liked, and after singing them 30 or 40 times, internalizing them, then you start to realize why they're good songs. Like why this Hank Williams song is so cool, and why this, this Bob Dylan song is so great. You start to learn the qualities of them that you hadn't really noticed, or they're just there and you like it, but you start defining those things, and then you start trying to imitate those. I mean, that's where you start, I'd say, imitating people.
Yeah.
And then you kind of maybe find your own voice eventually.
Are you writing songs naturally, or are you writing songs when you need to because it's your job to do it?
Well, it's a little of each, if I don't write for a while, I get kind of itchy and kind of grumpy about it. I go, geez, because I'm thinking about stuff. I'm thinking about the subjects matter for songs all the time. But if I don't start putting them out, you know, it's kind of like being constipated. You just need to keep the stuff flowing. If you take too much in and you don't let it out, it's bad. Because like I'm walking down the road, you know, we went out on the water with a friend just now here by Thomas Point Beach in his boat, and you know, I'm looking around, looking at all these beautiful homes, or just looking at the birds, or you know, just thinking about what went on here. Maybe I'm on input.
Right.
I'm on input all the time.
Right.
So you're thinking about that, you know, you're reading the newspaper about Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders and their hair, and you start, you know, you input that stuff, and then sooner or later maybe it comes into a song.
So we're gonna have some political interesting hair songs, maybe.
Well, that was the thing we decided at lunch, that the difference between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump's hair is Donald Trump's represents abuse, hair abuse, and then Bernie Sanders represents neglect. So I don't know. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, when you're writing songs, is it always on a different instrument, or like is it just whatever you got going on? Or?
You know, it helps to learn to try a new instrument, or like when I very first started writing anything. You know, I started to play the guitar when I was 12 and 13, and I learned how to play some stuff, and then I noticed Joni Mitchell tune her guitar funny.
Yeah.
So I started tuning my guitar different, and I went, you know, just messing around with it, and I found like really simple things became really interesting again. So that's what like playing the piano. I don't know how it works, so that helps find a new way into the same stuff, because there's not the same, you know, the musical forms. You kind of study them, and then you're kind of always going to be repeating, but you have to get into it some way, or find it, you know, an interest in it, and find something you just clicks. So it does help to take another instrument, but you know, like the banjo was that way for a while, and it still is. I had a bass around the house for a while, an upright bass, and I would write songs on the bass because it was a whole different way of looking at the music.
I love when we saw you over at Washington, D.C. in the Virginia area when you were doing a seminar there, a workshop, I mean, and someone asked you about the bouzouki.
I think these airplanes, we shouldn't worry because I think they're one of ours.
Yeah, they are. We were watching them before. They pretty intense. But you made a comment. Someone said, "What's it called?" You said a bouzouki, and
yeah.
Except when you're on the airplane, you can't call it that.
Yeah, when you're going through the security, and they say, "Hey, what kind of guitar?" You don't want to say it's a bouzouki.
Right.
You say it's an octave mandolin.
And all right. I wanted to. There was one thing I wanted to ask. I was curious. I wanted to ask you about. I saw on YouTube you and Sam Bush were in an airport. And
we were playing in the airport. You know what it was?
The luggage area.
Well, you know what it was, Scott. We were both headed home. I can't remember, maybe from Rocky Grass or something. And Blue Angels.
Wow. That's pretty perfect. Wow.
We were headed home from Denver. I think from Rocky Grass, actually it might have been some. David Grisman was there too, and his son. They had been playing some other gigs, and a whole bunch of people were waiting in the gate area to get on the plane. And I think we actually, those of us who were going to Nashville, got on the plane, and then they said, "There's a tornado warning. You need to leave the plane." And we got off the plane, and they took us downstairs, 2 floors down to this bunker.
Oh, wow.
I never knew there was such a thing, but there's a tornado shelter down there.
Oh.
So we're all down there, and you know, there's several plane loads for the people just hanging out there. There's a bunch of Boy Scouts. I don't know if you saw that. There was like a Philmont Scout ranches out there in New Mexico, and a bunch of people were coming back from that, getting on the plane. So we were down there, and Sam said, "We probably ought to play."
Well, on a good note, we know we're being protected very well right now.
Yeah, I wonder if so you can hear that over the Blue Angels. No, that's okay. Is that what it is, the Blue Angels? It's like a military.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, we were talking, we thought maybe there's a show going on or something. Now, in a case like that, when you start jamming, is it like, I mean, words just like you pull out a song you both happen to know? I mean, it sounds like you were practicing it like for 50 years.
Well, you know, Sam, I came up with Sam, you know, he was my hero, you know. Around 1970, I started playing bluegrass guitar maybe a few years before, studying Doc Watson stuff, and I got my first mandolin, and Newgrass Revival was really happening around 1971. And, you know, I just kind of studied him and David Grisman and those guys. So, yeah, I mean, we've hung together a good bit, too, now over the years. You know, in 1975, that was the first time I played the Telluride Bluegrass Festival, and that was the year Sam and Newgrass Revival came the first time.
I get the feeling they didn't get my memos that I was requesting.
Yeah, you know, they're protecting bluegrass from assault.
Well, let's get briefly on the instruments. What are the favorite ones that you like playing? Like the type, like what kind of mandolin is it? I know you're always using the A style.
I play a nugget mandolin, and I always have. I've had a few other things, a Gibson, and got one made by a guy in England named Phil Davison. But mostly I played the nugget. The thing is, I met Nugget when I didn't even own a mandolin at that time. And back in 1975 or so, he was just starting to make it. And we picked a good time to
How many times have you had to answer the same question like 3 or 4 times?
I think this will be an interview you have to remember even if you don't want to, you know? So that's the mandolin, is the...
Yeah, Nugget's a guy, his name is Chemnitzer, Michael Chemnitzer, and he goes by the name Nugget. It's a lot easier to remember. And pronounced, but he had made 3 or 4 mandolins before I met him, and he started working in Boulder when I moved there, and so we got to be friends. We had mutual friends from Ohio. He was from there. I'm from West Virginia, and I had friends in that area that I played some music with, and so they told me to look out for Nugget, and they told Nugget to look out for me, and we got together, hung out, and you know, whenever have a little get together, picking party or something, he'd come by. And so he made this A model mandolin for me that it was the instrument I used on almost every Hot Rise record, and it became kind of famous for him because I was traveling around a lot. It came out really good and really loud and really beautiful sounding one. So it's another thing. I mean, we kind of came up together. He's now known as one of the better makers around the world for mandolins. So I was lucky I met him. I mean, I helped him move and gave him like $250 and a ham at Christmas or something for that mandolin. It paid off great for me.
He doesn't still call you to help him move.
No, he doesn't anymore. No.
Well, I wanted to also ask you, you're saying about like picking parties and when you were just starting out. Around at the festivals, there's always, you know, people doing picking and everything. That's the great uniqueness that is bluegrass. Were you in that world? Like, was there a time when you were just chasing the festivals?
Oh yeah, I would borrow my parents' car after I could drive and go down to Camp Springs, North Carolina for the festivals.
Did they have airplanes in Camp Springs like this?
No, never had that.
You'd have to pay extra for that.
But yeah, I mean, I go to the festivals and the fiddlers conventions and stuff and try to learn.
Yeah.
You know, I just play. And I remember when I moved to Colorado, I went to Winfield. That would have been about 1974. Went to Winfield the first time. You know, I got in the contest and didn't win anything, but I played music all weekend. You know,
yeah.
I was there in the grandstand to hear people like Newgrass Revival and Dan Crary and stuff, but mostly I was out there kind of playing just to learn as I played. You know.
So you would run around the festival like so many people do, just going in and jamming with anyone who'd want to jam with you?
You know, and in those years, 72, 3 and 4 and 5, really, I was starting to, I was playing whatever gigs I could play, and trying to support myself playing music and maybe teaching lessons and that kind of thing.
When you were in school, were you going to school for music?
I went to college for a year up here in Maine, actually, but I never really, it didn't take. I was playing guitar all the time.
Right.
So I left school, and I eventually moved out to Colorado, and it was just about learning, and those years, 72 to 75, I met so many people that I still hang out with, including the guys in Hot Rise.
Right.
A bunch of people.
What brought on the wait for the plane here to... Quick, what key was that in? What brought on the aside from being Irish, like what brought on the Irish tunes so well? You go to Ireland all the time.
Well, Irish music. There was a little short period of time where I lived in Minneapolis, and right before I got married, and I had some friends up there that played that kind of music. I met them at Winfield,
Okay.
And there was one guy there, Bill Hinckley. He's no longer with us. He died a couple of years ago. Bill he could play. He sort of had a photographic memory. He knew all the fiddle tunes from the United States, Ireland. He knew all the jazz tunes, all the old time songs and all that kind of stuff.
So it wasn't really because you're Irish, it was more because you were hanging out with people.
Well, it sort of worked together with being Irish. It's sort of like you play that music, you play like Soldier's Joy or St. Anne's Reel or something, or Leather Breeches, that's another one. And then you realize pretty soon that those are Irish tunes.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at school here in Maine, at college at Colby College, I took a coordinated study about Irish history, politics, and literature, and it kind of whet my appetite for that whole thing. And the music, I was playing bluegrass and old-time fiddle tunes and stuff, and I realized, geez, this stuff, a lot of it comes from there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it took a while to start thinking about myself being Irish, I got a little older and I realized my great-grandfather coming from there in 1851, that wasn't that long ago. When I was 20 years old, that seemed like way too long ago to even think it'd be a connection. Now it seems like a blink ago.
Right.
Because I'm 60 now.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not that long ago.
But when you go to Ireland, I was there a few times. It's not a place, like they got musicians everywhere, but you can't, it's not easy to just play with them. They're not jamming.
You need to know the tunes. That's the thing. It's not like jamming. It's not like just kind of play whatever you want over these chords.
Yeah.
It's more like it's really melody driven. That always really struck me when I first went there. Is when I would play something, people would not play along because they didn't know it.
Right.
And they wouldn't just try. Whereas a bluegrasser would just try.
Just go in and play whatever, whether it works or not. I love the songs though that you wrote. The one with Dirk and the Wall. And
oh yeah. True stories about crazy times in Ireland. Yeah.
That's, I wanted to ask you as well. What are some practice techniques like for musicians that want to learn? Is there anything that you do to just like regularly, or you're just at a point now where you've done it all? I mean, you still got to move the fingers and stretch.
I spent a lot of years woodshedding, studying repertoire, but also sort of techniques of learning scales and chords and playing in good time, practicing with a metronome and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I had a great teacher in Denver named Dale Bruning, and that was his thing. I went to study jazz with him, and he's a great jazzer. He taught people like Bill Frisell and a lot of people that come out of the scene in Denver. But his thing was a cycle of scales and chords one week, and then you do rhythm studies the next week, and then the next week you work on repertoire. So you're applying those first two things to the repertoire, and just keep going through that cycle. So see, I work on sort of technical things. There was years where I'd spend 2 or 3 hours a day working on that stuff. Mm-hmm. And nowadays I'm busy doing stuff on the phone, getting gigs, trying to, business stuff, or maybe writing. But I still have to work on the technical stuff to keep my chops up. Some people don't need to do that, but even I've heard Chris Seeley backstage going through real simple scales, slow, and making it clean, and then building it up from there. Steve Earle, like at Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, I played with him several times, and it would be Fleet Week out there, the same weekend. Like they would have and the Blue Angels would fly, and they'd fly over Golden Gate Park, and every time they flew over, he would put the middle finger up at him, and he'd say on the microphone, "Sorry, I just have to do that."
Well, I wanted to ask you as well. We focus on a lot of up and coming musicians, backstage view. So, is there like anything you'd have to say to someone who's some of these younger kids that are coming out of Berkeley and ripping everything up, or wherever they're coming from?
Well, it's so exciting to hear the new take on everything. The kids, each generation stands on the shoulders of the ones before. I mean, the techniques have been developed, and then they take them further, and it's amazing what's going on. And I would say, you want to follow your heart. You want to take a good long look at everything, make a big overview like a liberal arts education would be, mm-hmm. so that you can sort of pick and choose what you're into, mm-hmm. and find what your strengths, and maybe avoid your weaknesses, kind of things.
And
but
to be ready for some tough times, because it doesn't come easy.
I think that anybody that really wants to make music will. I mean, people say, well, how do I become professional? How do I work it out? And I said, well, you got to put your nose to the grindstone, and if you really want to, you will do it.
Right.
And that's really the case. I mean, people are driven by it. I mean, that's what it was with me. I was in college for a year, and I spent all day playing the guitar, and I was starting to learn the mandolin and the fiddle then too. And I went, gee, I know what I want to study here.
You first started the mandolin and fiddle when you were in college.
Yeah, well, I played guitar when I was starting from 12 years of age, and then my aunt gave me a fiddle when I was 16, and I tried to make a sense of it, but I couldn't. And then when I was in college, a friend had a mandolin, and one weekend he went away. He gave me the key to his room because I wanted to listen to some of his records. My friend Jeff McKean, he's now known as Smokey McKean. He's up here in Maine. He's an oyster farmer, but he was in the same class as me at Colby College, and he left home for a long weekend, but I stayed because I live in West Virginia. He was living in Massachusetts. Anyway, he said, "Hey man, take the key to my room if you want to, listen to my records," and I did. And he also had a Sing Out magazine and a mandolin in there. And I remember the two tunes that were tabbed in that Sing Out magazine for mandolin were Fisher's Hornpipe and Ricketts Hornpipe. And I knew both of those on the guitar already. And so I figured them out on the mandolin from that tab, and I went, oh, that's how the fingering works. So then the following spring or something, I got home and got my fiddle out, and I started working on it. And about 2 years later, I could start to play with other people.
Wow. Well, that's news to me. I thought that you would have started like in the womb or something. Yeah?
No, I started on a guitar, and then about 7 years later, I started making sense of it.
How about some of the bands that are out there? Like, who are you listening to?
There's so many good ones. I like the Delamay, and I like the Punch Brothers. All the standard deities. Mm-hmm. I like some of the old-time music, like I'm looking forward to hearing the Foghorns today. Over in Denmark last weekend, there was a great group from Toronto called Shisham, Lotus, and Sun. And they were a great old-time trio, and they had a great take on the music. They were just really, it was really strong, punchy stuff. Another guy, I mean, a lot of times the people I like, I end up working with, like Cahalan Morrison and Eli West. I ended up producing a record for them a year or so ago. I really love Cahalan's songs and the way the interplay of their duet. It's kind of on the line between bluegrass and old time, you know. But the songs are killer new songs. Another one's Old Man Ludica. He's from Nova Scotia, and I'm just about to do a tour with him. Once Hot Rise wraps up in October, like the next week, we start traveling together. So he's a great songwriter, but he comes from an old-timey direction.
So your calendar is made quite in advance, I assume. I mean,
What's my calendar?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know, I'm a working musician, and I keep busy. You know, people are asking me to do stuff, and you know, it's funny. I try to be more and more selective about what I say yes to. But what happens is stuff gets better and better as it goes, so I say yes to more and more stuff.
Well, on the topic of new stuff, you have a new album coming out in October.
Yeah.
Which has some amazing feel to it throughout. Like even whatever you're singing about, it just there seems like a positive vibe to that's what I got.
It's a fun. I think the record is a lot of fun to listen to. You know, kind of light-hearted grooves. Ironically, some of the subject matter is, you know, about breaking up. You know, I had a divorce.
Interesting. The topic isn't upbeat,
yeah,
but you get that feeling.
Yeah, there's one called "I Gotta Move," you know, and it's like real light beat, like kind of western swing kind of thing, but it's about, you know, I gotta move, I gotta find a smaller place.
Right.
At the end, you kind of figure out that it's, you know, he split up with his girl, and that's why he's going to move. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of.
What's the name of the new album?
The new album's called Pompadour.
Which is.
And there's a song called Pompadour, which is sort of a true story where I got up in the morning and looked in the mirror, and my hair was like a pompadour. It was like Elvis or Lefty Frizzell or something. And it didn't last long, but I ended up, you know, writing this song right away about it. It was, you know, but it's like my stuff is all over the map. It, you know, it can be really deadly serious about, you know, how to deal with death and loss of love, or, you know, or war or whatever, but it could also just be about, you know, something silly like that.
Right. So when's that coming out? In October?
That comes out October 30, and it's like I said, Old Man Ludica and I are gonna Chris Ludica is his real name. We're gonna tour together. He has a new record that I produced called Domestic Eccentric. Worked on that in March, and it just came out in July. So this will be his U.S. tour for that, and so we're going to play a lot together, and as a duo and also solo.
Do you do a lot of producing?
Well, I'm doing more. I'd like to do more. I really love recording, and you know, I like the road is okay.
What is a producer's job? What is it that you do as a producer?
Well, you know, mostly what I do is the producer job. You're just another helper, really, and hopefully you have a perspective about things that the artist doesn't. I think maybe sometimes the artist might want you to help with technical stuff, you know, make it sound better. They don't know how to do that. You know, maybe it's about hiring sidemen, and sometimes it's about picking the songs.
So it's almost like you're like a general contractor in a way.
Yeah, you're just kind of the overview guy.
Kind of doing everything,
yeah,
making sure that it works out.
But mostly when I get involved, usually the artist has a great sense of what they want to begin with, or I wouldn't really be able to help them.
Are you playing on it with
them?
them?
I usually play on the stuff. There's some exceptions on projects, but usually I'm there to play. Like Chris Ludica's record, I played. It's pretty much a duet record. I play on pretty much every track, and it's just the two of us. And but his songs are great, and he plays clawhammer banjo, so I can play fiddle or mandolin or guitar against it, and it kind of fills it out and sing harmony. He's a great singer and really easy to sing with for me. So that's good. Cahalan and Eli, I didn't play as much, but you know, I was just trying to help them you know, there might be a song where they're doing something fairly complicated and it's not coming together. It's not understandable, so I kind of straighten it out, help them straighten it out maybe, or...
Which you know from years and years and years of...
Yeah, you learn. The studio can be kind of a freak out because when you're new at it, you're spending a bunch of money and you're laying your, you know, it's like your baby and you're like your little children. You don't want to let them go, your songs, you know. You want them to be just right, but you have to at some point let them go. So the producer kind of helps them shape it without them freaking out about it.
On the new Hot Rise album, the way you guys recorded that was very different from the norm, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, in the old days of Hot Rise, we were, you know, the technology of recording keeps evolving. You know, you think about the early days of bluegrass and Bill Monroe and Flatt and Scruggs, pretty much recording around one mic. Phenomenal sounding stuff. They were really well rehearsed. Anyway, as time went on, it got more and more elaborate. Like by the time Hot Rise started, it was everybody in their own little room, and you're kind of listening on headphones. And if somebody makes a mistake and the other guys didn't, then the one guy can fix his thing, and the other guys don't have to. That was good. It also made the sound pristine because you can really work on the sound of each instrument by itself. Nowadays, it's with a hard disk recording, it's real easy to fix things by just editing the whole take. Like, in other words, you got 4 or 5 people playing, one guy makes a mistake or a couple do, you can find that place in another version of that song, another take that in that same place, and just stick that in there,
right,
where it works. The last Hot Rise record, you know, we hadn't made a record in 25 years, so all of a sudden we were in hard disk world. And instead of going in our little separate rooms, we took off the headphones and got close in a circle like about as big as this rug, and just listened to each other with our ears and played live. And you know, that's more natural. That's where it starts usually for everybody. Is you just play it around a kitchen table or something, or on a front porch.
You just do another take.
You do another take, and maybe you pick the best versions of like each verse, or there's a lot of edits in there.
And what was the Solar? What did that have to do?
Solar.
First,
the studio, it has solar. It has some solar power, I think. Yeah, it's.
That was the Solar.
Yeah, you know,
perspective.
Nick Forster's. He started the radio show E-Town, which is kind of about the environment and about community and stuff. They focus on issues of the environment. So when he finally got his own building, he fought, you know, it was a lot of fundraising, but he eventually got solar power for the place. He arranged that. So I'm not sure how much of the building is solar powered, but it's enough of it to probably power the whole studio. So he's got a really nice studio, and we got to hang out in there, and he's got an in because he started the whole thing. So we could use the studio for pretty much free.
Right.
We just had to pay the engineer. So that, you know, when you take the time pressure away, then all of a sudden you can just kind of hang out and make music. Like if you're freaking out, it's not a good recipe for music.
Which if
you're worried about,
you're low on cash,
and
you got the pressure.
Yeah.
Right. But you were saying before about the old days with Bill Monroe and Earl Scruggs. Did you get to play with any of those guys?
Well, I got to play on stage with Bill Monroe and Earl Scruggs a couple times. Yeah. Doc Watson, really a great thrill to do that. There was one time at Rocky Grass where for some reason Sam Bush was not there, so I got his gig. You know, he would be the guy that go up there and play mandolin and fiddle with Doc. Well, he wasn't there that day, and so I got up and played with Doc on a set, and it was just a great thrill. But you know, I remember one time with Bill Monroe where he was at a festival out in California at the Strawberry Festival, and he told Byron Burnline, who was at there that weekend too. He said, "Byron, now don't tell any of the bluegrass boys, but I want you to get all the good fiddlers, and after such and such a song, I want you to all come up and play Uncle Pen, Sally Gooden, and a bunch of the fiddle tunes." So I remember Sam Bush and I, Byron, Paul Shalaski, there were probably a couple more, got up and played, and it was like we played 4 or 5 fiddle tunes with Bill, and Sam turned to me in the middle. He said, "Man, listen to that mandolin chop." And it was like, you know, Sam and I are both guys who play mandolin and play fiddle, and when we play the fiddle, we really wish there was a mandolin chop in there. But and if you want a mandolin player to chop, you want Bill Monroe if you can get him.
Right.
And there he was, you know. So that was
some power on that.
pretty awesome.
Wow, that's great. You want to play a number for us? I'll pull a mandolin out for you.
Sure, I'd play. Cool. Morgan Monroe. Let's see, what should I play there, Scott?
Oh, whatever you want to play. Play some, I don't know, from the new album if you want, or
Yeah, I'll try.
something old, something new, like a wedding. Play that Blue Angel song.
This is a Woody Guthrie song that's on there, Go Down to the Water. Go down to the water where the oil floats by. Hang your head down and cry. Write with your finger there in the sand. Mail it out with the tide. Mail it out with the high and the low. Watch the marks there in the sand. Listen to the fog on the homeless raves. Smell the salt sea in your hand. Smell that sea wind, taste it on your lips. That foam that rolls over my lost ships. Write your name there once more in the sand, where the dipper dips and the undertow slips. Kneel down and feel there at the water's edge. Write our names there side by side. Look and listen to all those ships that toss in the fog and in the tide. Down your hair when you deal down there. Let me be the wind that pulls your hair. Let me be the man you made out of sand, and let your hands keep making him there. When nobody's looking, kiss your hand. Touch to the nose of your man in the sand. Lay down with your head there on his chest. Be nice to your man in the sand. Be nice to your man in the sand.
All right. That's great.
That's
Thanks.
Billy Bragg wrote music to it, but it's a Woody Guthrie poem. It's one of those pieces that he wrote down in a notebook, and no one ever heard of music to go with it. And but the melody is from an old Irish song called "She Moves Through the Fair," and I heard a tape of Billy Bragg where he said, you know, I was trying to figure out what the music would be, and then I heard this and I realized it laid right over there. One of the funny things about all those Woody Guthrie songs, that those lyrics that are in these notebooks, you can almost figure out what the music is if you study on it enough, because there's music in the words, you know. They kind of, there's a rhythm to them, and you can sort of imagine what might fit in there.
They were showing at Delfest that they had asked Del to his daughter, I guess.
Yeah, Nora's been on a campaign now for over 20 years doing that, I think. The archive is amazing if you get a chance to see it. They have a museum now. They sold it to the archive to an outfit in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a museum and archive center there now. It's just been open a couple years since its 100th birthday.
Well, Tim, I know you got to head back, but if you can, I bet everyone would love to just get a quick picture with you if they could
Sure.
just run by quickly.
Why, sure.
Thanks
Thank you,
a lot.
Scott. Appreciate it.